So the next part of the design we're going to go on to is the making the longer points of the compass. So you will have seen in the instructions that it tells you to first of all cut out pieces 4, 12, 20 and 28. And you should have these shapes here. And then because I'm using a directional fabric, it does show you in the if you're using a non-directional fabric, you can cut them like this, but you need to leave 1/4 inch on either side for your seams. Because I'm using a directional fabric and I want all of the points to, all of the designs to face the same way, I've chosen to cut them all the same way. So all you need to do is to place this onto the shiny side of the freezer paper down onto the wrong side of your fabric, and then just press that in place. And then the best thing to do now is to mark these points. Now you could do that freehand there, just like that. I should really have a sharper pencil just to mark them. But the reason you're doing that is just to make sure that, you know, should the freezer paper begin to peel off a little bit as you work with it, then you've still got the points marked, because these points are important to get a good finish. So you've got this little bit here, here, and then I'm going to mark here and here. And then you're going to cut round this using your ruler and allowing a 1/4 inch outside of the paper shape, so that you end up with pieces cut out like this. Okay, so you want 4 of those, and then we'll go into the next one. So after you've cut all these points out and fixed the fabric on them, you're going to take what's left of your compass, and you're going to cut out the remaining points, but not just these parts. You're going to cut this whole part here. So that's right round from there until what you have left is just the circle in the middle. Don't lose the circle, you are going to need it, so put it back in your bag or wherever it is you're keeping it. So you're going to cut out your 4 points that are going to be shaped like that. Once you've cut all these pieces out, we're going to take these and we're going to, because it's going to be the same fabric as you've made these points in, you want them to, I want them to face the same way. So I'm going to lay them on my chosen fabric, making sure that I have enough room around it to get the 1/4 inch seam. And I think I'm just going to do them one by one, and I want the point at the same end as it is on the other one. So there's one. So when I lay these down here, I want to make sure that I am going to get 1/4 inch on either side. So there needs to be at least 1/2 inch there and enough space at the bottom. And to be honest, I don't mind if I lose a wee bit of fabric here. I've got plenty, so I'm not too worried. I'd rather have too much for the seam allowance than not enough. So then you're going to carry on just putting these all in together. Okay, so we have all of the points ironed on, and what we need to do before we cut out this next part is to flip this round, and these corner pieces, which will come apparent later, you're going to just peel that back to the drawn line there and fold that along the line where it's been drawn, just there, and do that on each of these points so that you actually end up with the same shape really as the last one, but you've got these little extra bits that you can use later on. So you're going to do that with all of these points. You're just going to mark that into that shape, and then we're going to cut round these just like we did with the other one. So this is what your pieces should look like once you've cut them and trimmed them off. You've folded back these little bits and cut around with your 1/4 inch seam allowance around the paper shape. Next thing is that we need to cut 8 1.5 inch squares for the next part. of a contrasting fabric, which are going to form the little diamonds at the bottom, or the little triangles. Now, having cut these pieces out with these lugs folded away, we want to now take these and fold that back out and just give it a press so that it sticks to the edges of the fabric there. Once you've pressed this bit down, you're going to flip that over so that the fabric side is upmost. And then we're going to put right sides together and we're going to match this edge with this edge. And I guess you could pin it, but you probably don't need to. Just grab a hold of it. And take it to your machine. You need to flip it over while you're holding it, and then you're going to stitch along this seam here. Again, just being very careful that you just going to hold the threads there so that we don't disappear down into the machine. Just being careful that you follow the stitching line carefully. Then we're going to flip that back over, very like what we did with the other one. Just give it a quick press to hold it in place so that it's out of the road of the other piece of fabric. And then we're going to do exactly the same from the other side. Sorry, we need to be that side. Take another one of these squares and we're going to line that up along here, making sure that everything's covered. And just hold on to it carefully and flip it over and put it in your machine. And again, a nice accurate stitch along that seam. And you should be fine. Now we've created our little corners, and of course they will get trimmed. I'll show you that in a second. So the final thing to do in preparing this piece, you've stitched on your two pieces there. I'm going to flip it back over and I'm just going to trim off the edge, and again still leaving that 1/4 of an inch around the paper piece so that you've got your seam allowance. So you've really just got a little bit to trim off there because you've already trimmed the other bit. So that bit, and then this. And just once you've trimmed the straight pieces, just for this curved piece, you're just going to have to do that by hand. You can eyeball it, or you can mark it out a little bit if you feel that makes it easier. Oh, it's a bit thick. Got a few layers of fabric there, but it's fine. And finally, before you move on to the next bit, I've already marked this point here. Just do make sure that you mark the points, because if the freezer paper does shift when you're working with it, and it can tend to, then at least you know exactly where the points are, and that'll keep things accurate. The freezer paper, if it does shift, you can just iron it back down again. It will stick a number of times. And if it comes off, just give it another wee iron and it should stick for a bit longer.